Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Ev. It's a pretty gloomy day here in Vancouver. It's cold, it's wet, and it's rainy. I thought today would be a perfect day to just sit back, relax, and do a little bit of preparation for some next projects that I hope to be casting on really soon. I have 3 of these skeins for the project that I want to cast on. Today I'm just going to be caking up one and then the accent color. And then I also have this cone that I would like to cake up. Typically you can just knit from a cone directly, but because I plan to hold this double, triple, I'm not too sure just yet. That is what we are going to see. I'm gonna be caking up this cone as well. So I'm gonna go grab my Swift, set up my caking station, and let's meet over there. Hello, I'm just gonna put this on the floor. So I'm just gonna leave the cone on the floor, and I guess we will just cake. And my hair's already all over it. We'll see what this knits up. Okay, so let's cake another one, and then I think that should be good. Also, I just wanted to quickly say, if you guys were wondering, this cone, I picked it up from Kensington Prairie Farm. It is 100% baby alpaca. It is 2-ply variegated teal, and this is 1,012 grams. So this one runs 800 meters, the 100 grams. I have 1,012 grams in total, 8,096 meters. The cone. I knew I would have to hold this together, but basically, yeah, I have 8,000 meters of yarn. But do with that what you will. So let's get onto coning more skeins. Tablet. So let's head on to Ravelry, and of course we need to sign in. Ugh, I wish Ravelry just remembered me. Before we start knitting and casting on some new stitches, I just wanted to show you guys. So this is what a swatch is, just a regular stockinette swatch. I think it was Rustic Heather Sport by, what was that brand name? Okay, I'm gonna find it and put it here, but that's what the navy blue is. And then it is held with a tin lin sadness garn mohair, a really rustic wool, but paired with a mohair, so it has a nice soft fuzz, adds a nice softness to the swatch, but it is still a little bit on a rougher woolly side. So I thought that this was really interesting combination, and I used it to knit up my blueberry vest. So this is what a swatch is. It is basically so that you can measure your gauge. Now gauge is how many stitches per inch if you are gonna meet the requirements for the pattern, because each pattern has a specific stitch count per inch. So today we will be actually swatching for. The first one is a pattern that I've talked about quite a lot in the past, is of course by petiteknit. It is the Elisabeth Blouse. Every time I search this up, I can never find it because I always put a Z instead of an S, but it is the Elisabeth Blouse. It is a pattern by petiteknit that was released this January, just at the beginning of the year, and she actually knit this up with line cashmere, which is insane. So it requires a sport weight yarn. If you go on Ravelry where it says yarn and there's a little question mark and you click on that question mark, it opens up a page and it says that a sport is a 5-ply, 24 to 26 stitches, the gauge. This yarn that I have right here is a lace weight. A lace weight is a 2-ply yarn. It is 32 stitches, 32 to 34 stitches for 4 inches. So that is a big difference. That is almost 10 stitches per inches. So what I'm going to do is, because a sport weight is 5-ply, we are going to be holding this double, which is going to make it a 6-ply yarn. So I'm just going to be 1 ply thicker. If I was just to hold it double and do 4 instead of 5, it would be a fingering weight, which is 1 ply too short. And I think that I would rather have 1 more than 1 short, just because I'd rather have a thicker, denser material than a very lace open, loose knit. Size guide, bust length gauge. Okay, so the gauge is 23 stitches for 32 rows, 10 by 10 centimeters, 4 inches in stockinette stitch on 4mm US 6 needles. And hopefully this builds up a nice material. I haven't actually tested this one yet, so I'm a little bit intrigued to see what exactly will come from this yarn. To cast on, what did I say? I keep forgetting. 23. We'll do 1 more on each side, so we'll just do 25 stitches. When casting on a long tail cast on, if you're ever unsure about how long you should make it, one trick is to take the yarn and just wrap it around the needle as many times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 25, 26. So this, if I start from here, should give me a tail long enough to knit. Basically, it's just so that you don't run out of yarn at your tail, or you don't have a really, really long tail that you kind of need to cut off at the end. See? About a 6-inch tail, so that at the end, if I wanted to weave it in on your project, you can, and I'm not left with like half a meter of tail to weave in. The material is very interesting. It is a little bit shiny. Honestly, if you were to tell me that there's like a silk in this or something, there has to be something else. It can't just be baby alpaca. It's baby alpaca that, it's not oily, it's like silky, if that makes sense. It's gonna be a beautiful knit, and I think this swatch is knitting up really, really nicely. The gauge is nice, but I think this is gonna work. I think this is gonna work. Just finishing the first swatch, and this is what it looks like. I think I'm gonna end up washing and blocking these before hanging them on my wall behind there. I also ended up making it just a little bit shorter, because what I really care about is how many stitches there are in an inch, not how many rows there are. The rows to me don't really matter. I kind of always end up doing shorter or longer than what is actually required. So we went with 3 1/4 inch. That's how long it is. It is 4 inches wide. So let's just count how many stitches that is exactly in 4 inches. 23. I have 23. Ooh, we needed 23 stitches. So this is perfectly spot on. Super, super happy that holding 3 strands together is spot on for the gauge that petiteknit had. I love how it is teal, but then there's like some lighter white. There's different length of hair fiber in this material for sure, and I really, really like that. Instead of just being flat, one shade, one color, it kind of gives it a bit of depth and substance. It is for sure going to be a drapey shirt, I can already tell. The second swatch we are going to be casting on again with my 4mm needles. By the way, these are the Chiagu interchangeable needles. The yarn that I'm going to be using for the next one is this lovely white and this blue accent color. Can you guys guess which sweater we're going to be swatching for? The porcelain sweater. So the porcelain sweater is a sweater that was published on Le Knit, December 2022, so it's been out for a year now. Calls for fingering weight held with a mohair, but the main color that I'm going to be using is from Fiber Co. Cumbria fingering weight into the hills, and it is this gorgeous kind of like marzipan, kind of like textured very light gray. It is 90% wool, 10% mohair, so because there is a 10% mohair in here, I'm not going to be adding an extra mohair. I kind of want to try having some sweaters knit up without mohair. So far all my sweaters basically have mohair. And then this blue is just 100% merino wool. A gauge swatch of 21 stitches, so it calls for a smaller stitch count for 4 inches. Swatch in the pattern actually calls for a single colored swatch, I said that, swatch, just to make sure that you're knitting the right size. But because the yarns I chose are from different brands, different completely fibers, I want to see if they work well together. I hope that doesn't cause too much of a disturbance in the look, in the knit. So that is why I am using both yarns in my swatch. So here I knit a few rows of the beige, gray, white. I don't know what to call this color. I'm also curious to see if this blue will even look nice with the yarn because it is such like a bright cobalt blue. I'm worried that the gray I'm using has a little bit of a warm undertone. I do worry that that's gonna look a little bit funky. Not necessarily gonna be repeating exactly like the pattern calls for, but it's just to have a similar vibe. So here we go. This is one row added, so we're just gonna keep knitting and we'll catch up. I don't like it. I'm gonna finish the swatch. What do I do? And I guess this is why we do swatches. So this is what the yarn looks like. I really don't like it. It kind of looks like a little sheep bundled up yarn. When I stretch it and pull it, it's nice, kind of, but it's just, I really don't like it. And I also don't think that this blue works exceptionally well with this kind of gray that I have going. I think maybe a more, just a different hue of blue. Like I want a blue, a bright cobalt blue, but just like a different, this one might be just a little bit too cold of a tone for this warmer gray type color. So here's what we're gonna do. Tomorrow the yarn shops are open, so we're gonna potentially head over to the yarn shop. I'm gonna bring my swatch and we are going to be testing out, checking out some yarn. Yeah, so this video is taking a different turn. So that is what we're gonna do. So we will catch up tomorrow and I will cry and post this over on Instagram as a fail. By the change of clothes and the wet hair, I'm pretty sure you guys can tell it is a different day. Yesterday, it is actually a different weekend entirely. Yesterday, we went to the yarn shop. I went to Wet Coast Wools, which is a yarn shop right outside of Vancouver in Kitsilano. I couldn't find a yarn that was a similar texture than this gray here. So what I think I'm gonna do is I bought this one from a different yarn shop. I think I'm just gonna look online at their colors and pick the same yarn, and we're just gonna go that way because I'm having I brought the swatch with me at the yarn shop and I just couldn't, at least that yarn shop didn't have blue that I was looking for that I have in mind, but then at the same time a similar kind of texture as this gray right here. I just couldn't find what I needed. Maybe it's just they didn't have it at the time, but for now the porcelain sweater will not be casted on. I am not gonna be knitting it, and it will stay in my wish pile of things I wish to cast on. What I did end up picking up, so I brought one of my skeins for my Novice cardigan just to compare and make sure that I picked up from the same color lot or a similar color hue just to make sure that it would work. So I picked up 2 more skeins for my Novice cardigan because I was a little bit short. Because when I did the math for how much yarn it would need, I calculated holding 1 strand, but you're holding 2 strands. I don't know what I was thinking. I knew it was a whole double. I don't know. Okay, so we're gonna take a little bit of a spin here. Because I won't be knitting the porcelain sweater and the swatch until I figure out what I'm gonna do with it. It's just gonna stay there. I decided to go another route. So recently I knit and casted up these socks. This is a pattern that I designed myself. This is yarn that was picked up at Knit City. Because October is known as Socktober, it really inspired me to knit and design my very own socks. So right now we are actually doing a test knit for these socks, and that is happening as we speak. People are just knitting away. But so far the pattern is working up, so I'm really happy. And unsure last night that I wouldn't actually find a yarn for this because I spoke to another knitter who is also trying to find her perfect blue, and she's also having a hard time for the porcelain sweater. I kind of had a feeling that I would go to the yarn shop and I wouldn't find the blue I'm looking for. So I was looking at my swatches and I thought, you know what, this video, you can't just have 2. It's always best of 3. So you need a 3rd one. I stumbled upon this lovely purple yarn that I also bought from Kensington Prairie Farm, just like the cone. And I bought this yarn without a pattern in mind, decided to knit up a swatch and maybe design my own knit. So this swatch here is just a 2x2 rib. I'm testing out just to see what it looks like, if it's like a lot of ribbing, and it was just to see what the yarn would actually look like. After knitting it, because this yarn is 100% baby alpaca, it is really squishy, really soft. I had a feeling that if I did knit a garment 100% baby alpaca, like a rib, it's gonna pull, it's gonna be heavy, it's gonna be really floofy. I put a poll over on Instagram and I asked you guys what you guys would think if I should pair this with a mohair, if it would be smarter to pair my alpaca yarn with a mohair or just knit it as is. I do worry that putting this much work, having a big garment, it's gonna really pull. Compared to this one, because it's 3 strands held together, the strands kind of like intertwine and hold like the structure. This one is the lilac at least is pretty loosely spun. Just by twisting it a little bit, the fibers kind of open up. So when I couldn't find the blue for this one, I decided to look for a mohair to match. To go with a lovely little pink mohair. So these are the Drops Kid Silk Unicolor Mohair, and it is 75% mohair, 25% silk. And the reason why I decided to go with pink is Drops Kid Silk, at least they're purple. It is a very, very pungent, like it's not violet, it's like maroon purple. I don't think Knitting for Olive has a purple. At least the store didn't have any purple for Knitting for Olive. And then they had some like brushed silk alpaca. I think because this is already alpaca, it is a DK weight, and brushed alpaca tends to be thicker than a mohair. I didn't want this thicken up the yarn. Also, alpaca, brushed alpaca is a lot longer of a fiber. It's a lot fluffier, so I feel like you would lose the rib stitch. I thought that that would be really, really nice. A really kind of like airy halo, a very light airy halo. You know what, we're gonna open up another skein. I'm gonna leave this one as is just so we can compare and contrast. All right, so I have my needles. So apparently, according to Ravelry, when you hold a DK weight, a lace, it creates a worsted weight yarn. 9 wraps per inch instead of 11. It is now 10 plies instead of 8. Okay, so the original swatch was knit with 4 millimeters, which is a US 6. We are going to try a 7, which is 4.5 millimeters. So I'm just gonna open this cake as well. 24. 25. Didn't I give the tip if you want to not have a long tail at the end, like that long of a tail to like wrap it? And I don't even listen to myself. I don't even do my own tips. So we just finished knitting the last swatch, so I decided to put them all on this little block mat. So these are the 4 swatches. The rib is not going to be all over. Most of the sweater will be stockinette. It is a little bit lighter because the pink is a lighter shade, so it does give it more of, it's not that much lighter, but it is a little bit, it mutes the violet. You still have the softness of the alpaca with an extra fuzz and soft that the mohair brings. Personally think I'm gonna go with the mohair, but I want to know what you guys think, if you guys disagree and think that it would be best to stick without mohair. But yeah, so these are the swatches for today's video. I think that we have some lovely little swatches, and I'm stabbing myself with the needles through the back of the mat. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I had a lot of fun knitting these swatches. Sometimes swatches don't always work out the way we want them to, but I'm glad to know that I can now cast on my very own sweater and start the Elisabeth blouse. So thank you guys so much for coming. Hope you guys have a lovely, beautiful day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!